All right, so today we are doing a deep dive, and it's going to be a fascinating one, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It's about this idea that minimizing your engagement with negativity, like just not responding to it, can have a huge impact on your life.
Like a ripple effect.
Yeah. And I know that at first glance, it sounds like typical self-help stuff,
Oh.
But the excerpt that we're looking at today takes it a bit further, and I think our listeners will find it really interesting.
Yeah, it really does.
So are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so this is what the excerpt says. The less you respond to rude, critical, argumentative people, the more peaceful your life will become. And that really resonated with me because, I don't know about you, but like when I interact with negative people, I always feel so drained afterward.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So I'm really curious to hear, like from your perspective, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, I think what's so interesting about this is that it's such a simple statement, but it touches on something really fundamental about how our brains work.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's this thing called negativity bias.
Negativity bias.
Yeah, our brains are basically wired to pay more attention to bad stuff than good stuff.
Interesting.
And it makes sense if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, Back in the day, like way back in the day, our ancestors had to be super vigilant about threats to survive.
Yeah, so like saber-toothed tigers and things like that.
Exactly. So their brains evolved to prioritize those negative stimuli to keep them safe.
Oh, I see.
But nowadays, we're not really facing saber-toothed tigers on a daily basis.
No, not so much.
Right. But our brains still operate with that same negativity bias, which means we often end up dwelling on negative thoughts and experiences.
So even if we know logically that negativity is bad for us, our brains are almost working against us.
Yeah, in a way. And that's
Yeah.
why this idea of not responding, of making that conscious choice to disengage from negativity, it's so powerful.
So like we're breaking free from that negativity bias.
Exactly. We're kind of retraining our brains to focus on the positive.
That makes sense.
I think it can be really helpful.
So how would this actually work, like in real life? I mean, ignoring a troll in the comment section online, that's one thing. But what if you're dealing with a person right there in front of you? Someone who's just being like overly critical,
Yeah, good point.
What do you do then?
I think that's where the whole choose your battles thing comes in, because
Okay.
there's a big difference between, constructive criticism, which can actually be helpful,
Right.
and just negativity for the sake of negativity.
Yeah, just someone being mean.
Exactly. And this excerpt, it's not saying that you should never engage in difficult conversations or avoid conflict altogether.
Got it.
It's more about recognizing those situations where engaging is just not going to be productive, or
Yeah.
where it could actually end up harming your own well-being.
So how do we know when to disengage?
Well, pay attention to how you're feeling in the moment. Like, are you feeling tense? Is your heart racing? Is your mind just going a mile a minute trying to come up with a response or an argument? Those are all signs that the negativity is starting to get to you.
Right.
And sometimes the best thing you can do in those moments is just to step back and disengage.
Just take a break.
Exactly.
That actually sounds a lot like mindfulness.
It really is. Mindfulness is all about becoming aware of your thoughts and feelings without judging them. So instead of just automatically reacting to negativity, you can pause.
Yeah.
Take a breath, observe how you're feeling, and then you can consciously choose how to respond or whether to respond at all.
I like that.
It can be really helpful.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Yeah.
But I had to say, it's still easier said than done, right? Like, it's one thing to understand this conceptually, but actually putting it into practice, that's a whole other challenge.
For sure.
Do you have any practical strategies or tips for how we can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I find helpful is to almost visualize a shield around yourself that's deflecting the negativity. Or imagine those negative words just bouncing off of you, losing all their power.
Like a negativity-proof vest.
Exactly. And sometimes a simple phrase like, I hear you, but I respectfully disagree, can be really helpful. It allows you to disengage from the conversation without making things worse.
Right. It's not like you're just ignoring them completely.
Exactly.
So this idea of don't feed the trolls, is that basically the online version of this?
Yeah, I'd say so. Trolls and negative people in general, they thrive on attention.
They want a reaction.
Exactly. They want to get a rise out of you. So by refusing to engage, you're essentially taking away their power. You're cutting off their supply.
Starving the negativity.
Precisely.
So to recap, by not responding to negativity, we're basically rewiring our brains. protecting our well-being, and even creating a more positive environment, both online and offline.
It's amazing how much of an impact this can have.
It really is. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive. I think our listeners will get a lot out of it.
I hope so.
As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. Think about where you're directing your energy on a daily basis. Is it going towards things that uplift you and inspire you, or are you letting negativity drain you? It's a choice, and you have the power to make it.
You really do. It's all about being mindful and intentional with your energy.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a great conversation, as always.
Always a good time. Yeah.
All right. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.